What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. The date is August 19th, 2024. The time is 8:05 p.m. where I'm at right now. And today we are finishing our fourth book in our Books React series. This is Crippled America by Donald J. Trump, published in 2015. And yeah, you can pick it up on Amazon for the humble price of only $10.49 in paperback. And I do not suggest anybody buy this book because as of our reading of it, it's been quite a ride, pretty bad, poorly written, horribly executed, unresearched dribble. It's just been a mess while reading this book. But we're going to continue with it no matter how bad it is. We only have 4 chapters left. So why not just jump into it and wrap it up today? So in our previous live stream yesterday that we did, we finished up reading of him talking about I believe it was his values. No. We're starting with values today. Let's just go back up to the table of contents because I can jump back to this section anytime. It's been a wild ride to say the least. So yeah, in our previous live stream, we did nice guys can finish first, lucky to be an American, the right to bear arms, and our infrastructure is crumbling. Basically, in nice guys finish first, Trump just basically lied and said he's the nicest guy ever and nothing bad has ever been done by him. But then he continues to name all the people that distance themselves from him because of his words and actions. Lucky to be an American is him, glazing the American flag, the flagpole, and everything about Americanism. The right to bear arms was probably the most disgusting chapter. Him talking about enshrining the right to have weapons, and we need more ways for people to have access to guns. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Him talking about the roads, bridges, and schools that aren't being built, and how he wants to build them up more. Some things in this book I actually do agree with. Some of the things he has said I do find actually moving and compelling and convincing, but the majority of it is actually pretty damn bad. But let's go here to Values chapter 13, and we're going to finish it up for the next 4 chapters. So y'all be in for the ride for this next maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so. So let's go. So values. The one question I get asked all the time is, Mr. Trump, how do I get rich? What they are really asking me is, how do I achieve happiness? Most people believe that once they're rich, they'll automatically be happy. I'm not going to pretend that being rich doesn't offer a lot of wonderful opportunities, but it doesn't necessarily make you happy. I've learned that wealth and happiness are 2 completely different things. I know the richest people in the world. Many of them are great negotiators and great business people, but they're not necessarily nice people, nor are they the happiest people. They're rich, they're smart. I'd hire them to negotiate for me anytime, yet their personal lives may leave something to be desired. The happiest people I know are those people who have great families and real values. I've seen it. I know it. People who have a loving spouse and have children they really love are happy people. Religion also plays a very large factor in happiness. People who have God in their lives receive a tremendous amount of joy and satisfaction from their faith. Those who have watched me fire people on The Apprentice, who have read my best-selling books, or who have attended my learning annex seminars think they know me. They know part of me, my business side, the professional part. I usually don't speak much about my personal life or my personal values or about how I came to be who I am today. To begin with, my father and my mother were enormous influences on me. Fred Trump was a rich man, but he made sure his kids worked hard. Believe me, he didn't hand us anything. We had to work for what we got. He would drag me around with him while he collected small rents in tough sections of Brooklyn. It's not fun being a landlord. You have to be tough. I'd see him ring the bell and then stand way over to the side of the door. How come you're over there? I asked once. Because sometimes they shoot right through the door, he replied. Rent collectors usually did this work. Methods were the same. It's so crazy. In our previous chapter, Trump was saying like the Second Amendment is a positive thing. We need more people with guns, good guys with guns, stop bad guys with guns. But supposedly, according to him, I don't know if we can believe him because Trump always lies, like he did in his book, right? Like earlier in a paragraph before, people who have God in their lives are happy. Trump is not a Christian. Trump is not a Christian. He literally said it himself, right? But Yeah, his daddy almost got killed by gun violence. He used to go to Brooklyn and try to collect rents and then stand and hide because the door might get shot up. Right? It's so crazy how the cucks are owned by the gun lobby. Continuing here. So, uh, rent collectors usually did this work, but the methods were the same. My work ethic came from my father. I don't know anybody who works harder than I do. I'm working all the time. It's not about money. I just don't know a different way of life, and I love it. I raised my own kids the same way my parents raised me. I have five great when my older ones were growing up. I'd have dinner with my kids almost every night. When they needed me, I was there for them. Truthfully, I was a much better father than I was a husband. Always working too much to be the husband my wives wanted me to be. I blamed myself. I was making my mark in real estate and business, and it was very hard for the relationship to compete with that aspect. My kids were a different story. I was always there for them. My two oldest sons claimed to be the only son of a billionaire who knew how to run a Caterpillar D10. What the hell is a Caterpillar D10? I guess like that construction equipment, like one of those big trucks, the forklifts, whatever stuff like that. Continuing here. While my daughter's Ivanka's friends were vacationing in the south of France, she was in New York working. My children have great mothers. My kids were raised to become hardworking, respectful adults. I could not be prouder of them. We never had any of the drug or alcohol problems that some of my friends' families have had to deal with. Hopefully, it stays that way. Now I see my kids becoming great parents. Growing up in Queens, I was a pretty tough kid. I wanted to be the toughest kid in the neighborhood and had a habit of mouthing off to everybody while backing down to no one. Honestly, I was a bit of a troublemaker. My parents finally took me out of school and sent me upstate to the New York Military Academy. I had my share of run ins there as well. While I wasn't afraid to fight, eventually I got the message. I learned respect for other people. I learned self discipline. By the time I was a senior, I was made cadet captain, one of the highest ranking cadets. My religious values were instilled in me by my mother. The first church I belonged to was the First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, Queens. I went there every Sunday for Bible class. The church had a strong influence on me. Later, I went to Reverend Norman Vincent Peale's Marble Collegiate College when I was in New York. Why do churches in America have these long names? Reverend Norman Vincent Peale's Marble Collegiate Church. Is that the official name? Did he put? No, no, that can't be the official name. He just put the name of the Reverend in there as well. Anyway, I grew up Presbyterian, and now it all makes sense why Trump is so bad. It all makes sense why Trump is so bad. Presbyterianism is one of the most staid, sanitized, sterilized, non religious type of religions or branches of Christianity it is. Basically, it's just a bunch of old white people getting together, chanting German hymns over and over again. Growing up Presbyterian, going to my dad's church, and yes, there are plenty black Presbyterians. Also went to the church in Alabama as well whenever I spent summers with my grandmother. Very staid, very non-moving. Uh, it's not even about Jesus at that point. It's just about ritual and tradition. So it all makes sense. It all makes sense why Trump is so wicked and why he sees God as like this authoritarian. All right, continuing here. Reverend Peale was the first type of minister that I liked, and I liked him personally as well. I especially loved his sermons. He would instill a very positive feeling about God that also made me feel positive about myself. I would literally leave that church feeling like I could listen to another three sermons. I learned a lot from Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the classic, The Power of Positive Thinking. I think people are shocked when they find out that I am a Christian, that I am a religious person. They see me with all the surroundings of wealth, so they sometimes don't associate that with being religious. That's not accurate. I go to church, I love God, and I love having a relationship with Him. I've said it before. I think the Bible is the most important book ever written. Not even close. Perhaps The Art of a Deal is second. Just kidding. Okay, Trump. All right, sure. I've had a good relationship with the church over the years. God is in my life every day. I don't get to church every Sunday, but I do go as often as I can. A lot of Sundays when there's a special occasion and always on major holidays. I make sure I am there. People like to give me Bibles, which I love. Jimmy Fallon asked me a question on his show one night. Have you ever apologized ever in your whole life? I told him that I think apologizing is a great thing, but you have to have been wrong. Then I promised, I will apologize in the distant future if I am ever wrong. The audience laughed, as they should have. If you want to know if I've ever been wrong, the best thing to do would be to ask my kids. They'll tell you the truth about that. Of course, I've done things wrong. Show me a human being who hasn't. But when I do, I go out and try to make things right. I try to do a better job going forward. I have been asked if I thought the Gospels would have a bearing on my public policy choices. That question has been asked of candidates for political office since Al Smith, a Catholic, ran for president in 1928. Many people thought JFK ended the discussion in 1960 when he said he would be president of all Americans. I am who I am. And deep down, the Gospels helped make me that person. In business, I don't actively make decisions based on my religious beliefs, but those beliefs are there, big time. What does offend me is the way our religious beliefs are being treated in public. There are restrictions on what you can say and what you can't say, as well as what you can put in a beautiful public area. The fact is that our deep rooted religious beliefs have made this country great. That belief in the lessons of the Bible has had a lot to do with our growth and success. Yes, it was the Bible thumping Christians who founded America and then decided, you know what would be great if we had black friends with us who believed in the same God we did. So let's go in boats, capture them from their homelands in Africa, work them in the fields, and force them to believe in our holy book. Yes, it was the great Christians of America who saw this vast open plain populated by people and said, you know what would be great? Let's clear them out of the land so that we can build churches on where their ancestral homelands are. Yes, it was the great Christians of America who did that. Continuing here, that's our tradition. And for more than 200 years, it has worked very well. For years, you'd have beautiful mangers in public spaces, and nobody complained about it. Now, Mary and the baby Jesus are seldom shown. Even the word Christmas has somehow become controversial. Who in the world could be offended by someone saying Merry Christmas? That greeting isn't critical of any other religion, and it isn't being disrespectful to those who practice another religion. It's a wonderful tradition. I don't understand why the same people who demand respect for their beliefs often don't show respect for their beliefs of others. It seems like every week there is a negative ruling on some issue having to do with Christianity. I think it's outrageous, totally outrageous. The president should do something about it. If the president has to go through the court system to do it, the president shouldn't do it. But this president won't. It's well known. I am not fond of President Obama. I think he has been an awful president. His inexperience and arrogance have been costly to this country. He's weakened our military, alienated our allies, and emboldened our enemies. He's abused his power by taking executive actions that he had no right to take. The next president is going to have to reverse and repeal many of the actions he's taken. I did take a lot of criticism for not responding when an individual made what some people considered to be an anti-Muslim comment at an event in New Hampshire. People have their beliefs and their opinions. It's not my job to defend the president. President Obama would never defend me. Anybody who wonders how I feel about women should just take a good look at the Trump organization. My positive feelings about women are reflected in the number of women who have worked in my organizations. I placed women in important leadership positions in the Trump organization long before anybody else gave them that opportunity because I knew they could handle it. I was the first developer ever to put a woman in charge of a major construction project in New York City. On The Apprentice, I was always pointing out the business skills of women. Talk to any of the women who worked for me, and they will all tell you the same thing. I am a tough, demanding boss. I reward success. I penalize failure. I treat women no differently than I treat the men who work for me. I give women the responsibility they earn with their performance. I pay them the same, promote them accordingly, and when they mess up, fire them the same. I couldn't be more proud of my record with women. Maybe my spokesperson on this subject should be my daughter, Ivanka. I take tremendous amount of pride in the fact that my children not only work with me, but when I'm criticized, they are the first to defend me. Okay, I hear you, Trump. Listen, it's possible, totally possible, that Trump does treat women fairly in his organization, right? It's possible. Totally possible. And hey, if that's the case, good for him. Kind of sad that somebody at a Trump rally was ranting and raving, Obama's a Muslim, and he didn't say nothing about that. You know, what was his name? John McCain, when he was running against Obama, somebody ranted in the crowd that Obama was a Muslim, and then McCain said, "No, sir, we don't do that here." Somebody also ranted, "He's not a real American." The rumor, the lie that Trump made up, right? And John McCain stopped that. But Trump doesn't have the same decorum. You know, Trump looks down on Obama. He started the racist lie. He was born in Kenya. He's a Muslim. We need to see his birth certificate. All that sort of stuff. So those are his Christian values: lying, 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 and being racist. Continuing here. 14, chapter 14, a new game in town. Contrary to the jokes, I don't think the White House needs any bright neon signs on the roof. No need to add additional wings or to sell the air rights. I do, however, think we need to bring some business acumen to the White House. The only thing you can be certain about is that, unlike the Obama administration, I stand up for this country proudly and loudly. I continue to be exactly what I have been, the greatest cheerleader for America, the America that we should be leading, not following, winning, not losing. We have an amazing history. America is the greatest country that has ever existed on the earth, and yet for some reason our leaders are reluctant to press our advantage. I've successfully built one of the most respected brands in the world by representing it in everything that I do. I realized a long time ago that if I'm not proud of what I'm selling, then there is no reason for anybody else to feel that pride. I put my own name on my buildings and on my products, and I stand behind them. People have come to expect top quality from anything that carries my name. There is nothing in this world in which I take pride than there is nothing in this world which I take more pride than the United States of America. I will always be its best defender and the best salesperson and cheerleader we've ever had until I lose an election and I tell my minions to run into the Capitol and kill my vice president. Yes, I love America until I lose. Continuing here. America is the leader of the free world. We've earned the right to boast and make it clear that we are ready and willing to do whatever is necessary to defend this country, as well as liberty anywhere in the world. Our national anthem gets it right. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's time we live that message and let the world know we're willing to back it up. Make America great again means standing by our word. We've watched President Obama draw a line in the sand, then another line in the sand, then no line at all. We've become an embarrassment to ourselves and to our history. When our allies don't trust you and your enemies don't fear you, you have zero credibility in the world. Okay, are you talking about like when you said, let's defund NATO? Let's get rid of NATO. The European nations aren't paying their fair share, so let's just let the Russians run ramshot over Europe and continue to destabilize the world? Are you talking about that? When our allies don't trust us? When Germany and France are saying we have to think about a future where America is not in our back pocket? Is that what you're talking about? Or also when your allies don't fear you? When you went to the meetings with Putin, Trump, and you left with your head down, and you went and shook the hands of the leader of North Korea, and he basically bitched you in front of the whole nation, used you as a prop, a stunt, no better than Dennis Rodman in North Korea. Is that what you're talking about, Trump? When your allies don't trust you and your enemies don't fear you, you have zero credibility in the world. I think that pretty much describes your administration. Continuing here. Right now, our allies don't know what to believe about us or how or if to value our word. President Obama has been talking into the wind for a long time. We've seen Putin ignore him. We've seen just about every faction warring in Syria pay no attention to him. Let's repeat that. We've seen Putin ignore Obama. We've seen just about every faction warring in Syria pay no attention to Obama. We've seen the Chinese taking tremendous advantage of our trade policies. We've seen the Iranians leave the conference table where we were negotiating a nuclear treaty, where a new era of cooperation is proclaimed. And then a few weeks later, the Ayatollah is threatening again to destroy Israel and laughing at the U.S. Closer to home, only blocks away from the White House, Congress is preparing to decide whether or not to shut the government down. This happens almost every other year. We need a leader who is going to restore the respect this country enjoyed in the past. I'm criticized for not issuing elaborate, detailed policy statements. What good are detailed plans in your country if your country doesn't have the credibility to carry them out? But I issue them anyway. Let's go back to the basics, back to the America our citizens embraced, because we were recognized as the major force for progress and peace. Many of the lessons I've learned in business are applicable to our current situation. The most important lesson is this: stand behind your word and make sure your word stands up. People who have done business with me will tell you that I never say something unless I mean it. I don't make promises I can't keep. I don't make threats without following through. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking you can bully me. My business partners and employees know that my word is as good as any contract, and that better go for the other side's word as well. I stand behind my commitments and our commitment as a nation. I stand without question behind the Constitution at home, and I stand without question behind our allies abroad. No friendly country and no allied leader should question our ironclad support again. No enemy and no enemy leader should misinterpret our resolve to fight to the death. Their death. That's a bar. That's a bar. I'm not gonna lie. Trump do got some bars. Fight to the death. Your death. That sounds like something Tarantino would put in the film. The last words Sam Jackson said before he like blew the brains out of his mafia boss or something. I don't know. That's hard. That's a bar. I'm gonna give Trump some bars. All right. Water break. All right. Back to it. So we won't need the president of Israel to come to our shores and explain to Congress what we used to stand for. Making America great again means never taking another step backward. Yes, we'll take inspiration from the heroism of our past, but we're only going to charge ahead now. When I played sports growing up, there was a saying in the locker room: if you take the first step backward, you might as well just keep going. To put it another way, if you can accept losing, then you've already lost. There have been times in business when it has made sense to change strategy or even walk away from a deal. You must never be afraid to walk away from a bad deal. Someone should explain that principle to President Obama and John Kerry. It's only by being willing to say enough that you gather strength and force your adversaries to modify their behavior. I understand that you can't be totally rigid in negotiations, but on our core principles and core strengths, there can be no backing up or retreat. That's why we need to rebuild our military so that no one will have any doubt about our strength or our intentions. If we are challenged, we will meet that challenge, and other leaders in other countries will think seriously before they doubt us again. My own style of conducting business is straightforward. I think big, I aim very high, and then I keep pushing and pushing toward that goal and beyond it. In the end, I may not get everything I want. I understand that, but I never compromise on the basic goals I set out for. Making America great again means convincing the smartest and the best people to come to Washington and join in putting our country first. The truth is that politicians have given government a bad name. It's a shame. The best people don't want to get involved in a bureaucracy where nothing ever seems to get done. Who can blame them? The kinds of people we need in government are executives who know how to get things done. These are the types of workers and executives who already are or who will become stars in any industry. There are also many workers in our civil service who are waiting for good leaders to inspire them. Years ago, these types of people wanted to be in government because they had faith that government was there to help people and that they could contribute to our nation by doing a good job. They believed in the service part of public service. Now, those inside the Washington circles are demoralized. Those outside don't want to go there. So many people go to Washington aiming to change it, only to serve themselves change, only to see themselves changed instead, and not for the better. Ambitious government workers can't break through the red tape, and that drives them to leave government to go into private industry. You end up with mostly careerist lifers doing the day to day work. It's a terrible cycle. The government is filled with good people who are stymied in trying to get things done. And because nothing gets done, the best people outside Washington don't want to go into government, so nothing ever gets done or improves. We need to create an exciting atmosphere and put good people in the right position to make America great again. One reason we rarely have difficulty recruiting the people we want for the Trump organization is that they know they are going to play a key role in an aggressive company that exists to make big things happen. It's an exciting place to work. This is something that I can say. I can somewhat agree with Trump. I didn't continue reading. I don't know exactly what policy he wants to have in here. But should government workers get paid more? Yes. Should post office workers get paid more? Yes. Should security guards at the Capitol get paid more? Yes. Should elected officials get paid more? I would argue yes. Yes. For example, the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is getting flued out by white supremacist billionaires who got Nazi memorabilia at their mansions because he feels like the six-figure salary he's getting as a Supreme Court justice is not worth it. I can kind of understand that. It's a lifetime job where you're making big ass decisions. You got to constantly be on your P's and Q's when walking outside because somebody might not like your decisions and you could get killed doing it. Keeping it real, got to keep it real. Every politician is in fear of their own life. Trump's minions ran up in the Capitol and tried to rape AOC and kill Mike Pence. A few years ago, a leftist shot some right-wing radical Republican at a football game or baseball game, something like that, right? Political violence is endemic in America. I don't think any other country has had as many presidents assassinated as we have. Don't hold me on that, but we have had quite a lot. We've had quite a lot of attempted assassinations and actual assassinations of presidents, more so than other democracies. So I would argue, people, when you're doing a job and your life's on the line, yes, you should be paid more. So the politicians deserve to get paid more. Career government people should deserve to get paid more, and it should be commensurate with what the private sector is doing. So I actually agree with this on Trump. This is the thing. I'm a communist, I'm a socialist, I'm a leftist, and all that sort of stuff. But one thing I am is a reader. And a lot of Trump people don't even read. They just believe anything their guy says. A few weeks ago, I did a live stream on my channel talking about how Trump doesn't want to tax Social Security benefits, and he also doesn't want to tax tips. But I put it in the poll here. Kamala Harris doesn't want to tax Social Security, and she doesn't want to tax tips. And everybody voted against it because I have a right-wing fascist reactionary audience, which goes to show that MAGA people are in a cult. They're in a cult. They actually don't care about American workers or American people or people in general. They just care about sucking the big fat white dick of their leader, their mushroom dick, small hand leader, sensitive leader, rather than actually caring about policies. When Trump actually says something good, I will agree with it. Should we tax Social Security benefits? No. Should we tax tips? No. And should people who want to work in government get paid more? Hell fucking yes. And that also applies to people all across the nation as well, which is why we need a higher federally mandated minimum wage, 15, 20, hell, $30 an hour. We can afford it. We can afford it. Every worker in America should not have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. Or if you're one of the lucky few who's in the six-figure club, you shouldn't have to just overtime work to make it, to get by or to get ahead or to have savings to make sure you're okay. But I digress. I digress. People don't actually care about the policies, though. They just care. They just care about making sure their white supremacist in chief gets back in office, right? Anyway, I'll continue here. People want to have a stake in that type of organization. They know they're going to be respected and judged on their accomplishments. They know that life in my company is never going to be boring and that they are going to be well rewarded for their hard work and share in the success. Really talented outsiders will relish the thought of becoming part of the future. Of course, due to the necessary budget controls, there will be fewer employees in the government overall. This just means that competition will be even fiercer to become one of the best. Making America great again means restoring law and order both on the street and in our courtrooms. Our police officers are doing an incredible job keeping us as safe as possible, but the job is getting harder for them because they aren't getting the support they need. Like our military, they must have whatever equipment they need to protect themselves and all our honest, hardworking citizens. Government must be on their side instead of coddling criminals. Obviously, that means putting judges on the bench who will uphold the law rather than look for loopholes or try to make law. We need to appoint justices, not just on the Supreme Court, but throughout the entire federal system, who will leave lawmaking to the legislators as specified in the Constitution. The next president may well have the opportunity to appoint 2 or more Supreme Court justices. These appointments could determine the direction of the court for several decades. We need the right caliber of judge sitting in the highest courts. Making America great again begins at home. It means restoring a sense of dignity to the White House and to our country in general. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. The President is the spokesperson for democracy and liberty. Isn't it time we brought back the pomp and circumstance and the sense of awe for that office that we all once held? That means everyone working in the administration should look and act professionally at all times, especially the President. The way that's just funny because it's looking professional, looking directly up at a solar eclipse, looking directly into the sun. I guess that's professional. That's just plain on stupid. Anyway, The way you dress and the way you act is an important way of showing respect for the people you are representing and the people you are dealing with. Impressions matter. Making America great again means taking our country back from the big money interests. We have a country where the big problems can't be solved by consensus because the small minded lobbyists and special interests are clogging the halls of Congress with their special access. Everyone talks about listening to the voice of the people, but how can you hear that voice when no one represents that voice? I am listening. Let's restore trust and pride in our country by making America great again. And the white trash crowd goes wild. Yeah! Make America great again. Yeah! Yeah! Trump, baby, Trump, monster trucks, yeah! Yeah, too many niggers outside. Yeah, make America great again. Continuing. All right. Teaching the media dollars and cents. I hoped Donald Trump, the pompous host of Celebrity Apprentice, runs for president. Wrote Washington Post columnist Michelle Singletary in April 2015. She continued, then we'll get a certified look at his income, investments, and debts. But here's a Trump-like prediction, which is like the various pronouncements made by real estate developers, by the real estate developer that aren't backed by any credible evidence. Trump will not run. He won't officially declare his candidacy because the Ethics in Government Act requires those running for federal office to file disclosures of their personal finances. Kyle Smith, resident genius at Rupert Murdoch's New York Post, also had it all figured out. He wrote, big news coming from Donald Trump. Big, huge. I have the news before anyone else. Donald Trump is running for president of the Donald Trump Love and Admiration Society. He's sure to be elected in a landslide. Oh, that other thing? Nah, no chance. When Trump declared to the Republican Party of Iowa's Lincoln dinner that he is going to make an announcement in June, that's going to surprise a lot of people. He wasn't preparing to launch his long-awaited candidacy. He was simply doing what he always does: promote the Donald, generate headlines, get people talking. The truly odious Jonah Goldberg of the National Review was his usual incompetent self when he wrote, arguing with Trump is sort of like dressing up an adorable toddler in a Viking outfit and listening to him say he will raid my village and slaughter all in his path. It's cute. It's funny. Maybe it's even vaguely disturbing if he goes on too long. But just as with Trump's ranting, the one thing you don't ever do is take it seriously. This is the sad and often pathetic state of our objective media today. The people who are supposed to be reporting the news have no concept of fairness because they believe themselves to be the experts. They know better. They have the inside scoop. They never get embarrassed, but they should be. They must think their readers are idiots who forget how often they get it wrong. After I declared that I was running, a lot of them still didn't believe it. Somehow they all knew that I wouldn't file the financial disclosures because maybe Trump isn't as rich as people think he is. As it turned out, after the filing, I was much richer. As the brilliant Goldberg wrote, getting it completely wrong again, in the past, Trump always pulled back from the brink. Why risk his beloved TV show? Why endure the embarrassment of revealing he's not as rich as he claims? But something changed, and Trump took the leap, though he hasn't provided the required financial disclosures yet, which inclines me to think that he will either suddenly find an excuse to retreat or that he has a team of accountants trying to figure out how he can simultaneously save face and avoid perjury. It's incredible to me how dishonest the media in this country really is. People sometimes forget that the newspapers and television stations are profit-making businesses, or at least they're trying to be. If they have to choose between honest reporting and making a profit, which choice do you think they will make? The sad thing is that all it does is prove that both liberal and conservative news outlets can lie and distort the news shamelessly. I've had meetings with reporters who faithfully recorded what I said, then changed the words in the meaning. Reporters have been writing about me and talking about me, even interviewing me in newspapers, magazines, and on television for almost 4 decades. A lot of my press has been good and fair, but some of it has been incredibly dishonest and just terrible. I get along well with a lot of the good reporters. It's those people trying to get attention by writing inaccurate stories about me and the Trump organization that I really object to. There are some experiences I've never forgotten. I had a so-called journalist from a well-known publication come up to my office and interview interview me and several of my executives. We gave him a pile of paperwork. We gave him financial reports and statements, anything he asked for. Then he wrote one of the most inaccurate stories I've ever read. The public pays attention to the story for less than a week, especially when you get as many stories as I do. But the impression a bad story leaves lasts a lot longer. For a long time, I had decided to ignore most of these attacks. I had buildings and golf clubs going up all over the world. My TV show was in the top 10. I've got a great family. I didn't want to give them any more attention than they deserve. But then my cousin, John Walter, called and started complaining about a particular story he'd heard, saying I hadn't built a building since 1992, and told me I had to set the record straight. I couldn't continue to let reporters get it so wrong. I hadn't built a building since 1992. That's just bizarre. You'd have to be blind as well as ignorant to say something like that. It's got to be the easiest thing in the world to check the things I've accomplished. I'm bringing it up because it makes the point that you can't believe everything you read or hear, especially about someone like me. I could list literally dozens of major projects I've done since 1992, and I do in the appendix. Okay, that's just all right. This is a book about what you want to do for America, and all you're talking about is your big buildings. Look at my big, big buildings. I could literally list dozens of major projects I've done since 1992. But just for example, the award-winning 52-story Trump International Hotel and Tower opened in 1996. The five-star Trump International Hotel and Tower opened in Chicago in 2009. The $1.3 billion Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas opened in 2008. The completely renovated crown jewel of Wall Street, 40 Wall Street, which for a brief time was the tallest building in the world, reopened in 1996 and is totally rented. The renovated 555 California Street, the second tallest building in San Francisco, reopened in 1996. The list goes on for pages. The 35-story Trump Park Avenue, Trump World Tower. I've built the best golf courses in the world, everywhere from Palm Beach to Aberdeen, Scotland. The Trump National Doral, Miami. I have 3 iconic golf courses in Scotland and Ireland, with many hundreds of hotel and residential units that have been built or restored by me better than they originally were. I haven't even slowed down. The beautiful old post office building in Washington, D.C. will soon be the Trump International Hotel, Washington, D.C. I won a fierce bidding war for the opportunity to renovate this magnificent building, which is due to open in 2016, and many, many more. I've obviously been an extremely busy man since 1992. So terrible, lazy reporting does bother me. I think it would bother anyone who works as hard as I do, and the amazing people who work for the company, when a reporter writes something that inaccurate. The next time you read or hear something about me that doesn't seem right, take a good look at the person who wrote it or said it on TV and see if you respect them. I don't care about him building his buildings, whether he built them or not. It's highly possible he did not construct a building from the ground up since 1992, or he bought buildings that were already made, refurbished them, built on top of them, whatever. I don't care. This is the problem about reading Trump's book. It always comes back to self, always comes back to this capitalist megalomaniac dribble that he just continues to pour out onto the page. What happened to building up America? Now you're just building up your own ego. Continuing here. So terrible, lazy reporting does bother me. I think it would bother anyone who works as hard as I do. Yeah, I already read that paragraph. All right. Another reporter wrote in a major publication that my father gave me $200 million when I started out. Don't I wish? The reporter didn't even give me the courtesy of calling me to ask if that was true. He read it in an old book that had it wrong and wrote about it. There is no man in the world I loved or respected more than my father. He was my best friend and my mentor. He gave me his knowledge, his work ethic, and his drive to succeed. He built his own wonderful company in Queens and Brooklyn from nothing, but he worked in different times on a different scale. He built good housing, and I've built major buildings and resorts in New York City and around the world. I took what I learned from my father and built my own business, and no one was more proud of me for doing it than my father. He told a business magazine once, everything Donald touches turns to gold. I'm proud of what I've built, so when so-called journalists get it wrong, I have to respond. The problem is that it's getting worse. I know that every poll shows that the public doesn't trust the media. The irony about that is that the media is conducting those polls. Even they have to admit people don't trust them. Maybe the journalist's most embarrassing moment so far came when I filed my financial statement. I am the richest presidential candidate in history. I'm the only billionaire ever to run. I'm not accepting donations from my rich friends, special interests, or lobbyists. When was the last time someone running for political office didn't take money? The voters know it and love it. And that's a problem because that's a lie. That's a straight up lie. He does take money from special interests and also other billionaires. Elon Musk, for example, right? But even back then, he was taking money from other billionaires and special interest groups. So maybe I shouldn't have been surprised at the response when I filed my 92-page long financial disclosure forms. My net worth is in excess of $10 billion, even more than people thought. As any accountant will tell you, it's actually almost impossible to put down a specific number because large assets are always in flux. The total value not only changes every day, it changes every hour. I also have significant foreign investments that are difficult to value, plus the forms we had to fill out weren't designed for someone like me. There were many places on the form where the only box I could check was $50 million or more. For example, one of my buildings is worth about $1.5 billion, but on other forms it's valued at only $50 million or more. We checked off a lot of boxes wherever possible. We were accurate to the dollar. I am never shy about creating news by being controversial and fighting back. Remember, we need to make sure this country stands up and fights back. I've held more well attended news conferences in the past few months than any other candidate. I always draw a large crowd of journalists who are like sharks, hoping I'll put some blood in the water. I try to oblige. I participated in the Republican debate, and Fox drew the biggest audience for a news event in their history. In the second debate, CNN had the biggest audience in its history. I wonder how many people would have watched if I wasn't involved. Not many. Okay. All right. So I have nothing to say about that chapter because there was nothing in that chapter. It's just about self, 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 self. I'm interested to read the next book because I just want to see how normal people think. Once again, not distorted billionaires with rich daddy issues. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, we're almost done here. Chapter 16. After this, I think there's only chapter 17 left, and then we're finished with our fourth book in our book react series. All right, big dog, big top here. Yeah, reading is fundamental. Yeah, if you got a book you want me to read, put it in the chat. You hear me? Yeah. Anyway, Chapter 16, a tax code that works. The one thing that everybody agrees about is that our tax system doesn't work. The current code is crazy. The federal tax code is 74,608 pages long. Nobody can really understand it. Not even the accountants who try to help taxpayers fill out their forms. An entire industry springs up every year just to help Americans figure out how much money they owe to the government. The reality is that the current tax code takes too much money from the people who need it most, while allowing others to find ways to reduce their tax burden. It discourages major corporations from reinvesting foreign profits here at home and makes it hard for small businesses to grow. It absolutely destroys jobs rather than helping create them. A sensible tax plan would provide tax relief for middle class Americans, allowing hardworking people to keep more of their own money. It would reduce the taxpayers' annual anxiety and frustration by simplifying the whole tax code. It would grow the economy and create jobs by discouraging corporate inversions and make America competitive around the world. And it wouldn't add to either our debt or deficit. The tax reforms I'm proposing address all of those problems by simplifying the tax code for everybody. My goal is to put H&R Block out of business. I described those solutions in an op-ed piece that appeared in the Wall Street Journal in late September 2015. Tax Reform for Security and Prosperity, it was called. I wrote that the top priority for the government of the United States should be to provide security for its people. That security includes removing uncertainty and making sure that the economic future of the country is assured through better deals, smarter trade agreements, and tax policies that unburden the middle class and unleash the private sector. My approach to tax policy will do just what needs to be done. For all Americans, the uncertainty and complexity of a tax code written for special interests and the very rich will be removed, and a clear future will be available for all. Isn't Trump the same guy who created the tax codes that created tax cuts for the rich during his administration and wants to do it again? Didn't he say this clearly in one of his recent rallies or interviews? Yeah, he still believes in the trickle down economics that Reagan was talking about. Anyway, continuing here. The plan has several goals. Let me make it clear that this set of policies takes dead aim at eliminating deductions and loopholes available to special interests and the very rich, as well as those deductions made redundant or unnecessary by the much lower tax rates every person in business will be paying. In particular, I am proposing ending the current treatment of carried interest for hedge funds and other speculative partnerships that do not grow businesses or create jobs. That's a tax for the rich. Ending a tax on hedge funds is a tax for rich people because only rich people can invest in hedge funds. Hedge funds are just big corporations that take rich people's money and invest it in highly speculative assets, something only rich people can access. So saying like we're going to untax the hedge funds to create more jobs in business is crazy. You're creating a job only for a sugar baby. By giving tax cuts to hedge funds, you're only making sure the next fine ass, big booty, big titty Colombian can get flued out by Weinstein in New York to get piped out. That's the only thing you're getting, the job you're creating. You're creating more jobs for foreign immigrants like Melania to come to America to get piped out by rich billionaires who work for the hedge funds. That's insane. The first goal of the plan will be to provide tax relief. If you are single and earning less than $25,000 or married and earning less than $50,000, you will not owe any income tax. This will immediately remove some nearly 75 million households from the income tax rolls. Second, the tax code will be simplified. Instead of multiple tax brackets with multiple variations, there will only be 4 tax brackets: 0%, 10%, 20%, and 25%. This new code eliminates the marriage penalty and the alternative minimum tax while providing the lowest tax rates since before World War II. Further, this plan eliminates the death tax, thus allowing families to keep what has been earned. Let's make it absolutely clear. The death tax is the estate tax. And the estate tax is when rich people die and they have their mansions, their multi-million dollars that they saved in the bank account, their gold bricks that they hide under their bed, like Scrooge McDuck. The estate tax makes sure those people pay their fair share. So people are not just passing on their wealth to the next generation. And then in a few years, we have a feudal society with aristocrats in America. Old money aristocrats do not belong in America. And the estate tax, while very little, while people pay 40% of all the money, all the assets that they've accumulated in their life, only very, very rich people pay the estate tax. It's not your dad who just wants to leave you a couple grand, right? It's not that. It's when there are multi-millionaires who die and want to leave all their money that they accumulated to their children, instead of investing it back into society to allow that wealth to circulate. If you get rid of the estate tax, we will have an aristocracy, a landed gentry in America. Continuing here. So the proposed policies will allow the middle class to keep most of their deductions while eliminating many of the deductions for the very rich. With more money in the middle class pockets, consumer spending will increase, college savings will grow, and personal debt will decline. Third, we need to grow the American economy. For the past 7 years, our economy has been at a virtual standstill. Growth in the gross domestic product of less than 2% per year is pathetic. We need to spur production, bring home jobs, and make it easier to invest in America. The plan states that any business of any size will pay no more than 15% of their business income in taxes. This low rates will make corporate inversions unnecessary and will make America one of the most competitive markets in the world. This plan will also require companies with offshore capital to bring that money back to the United States at a repatriation rate of only 10%. Right now, that money is not being brought back because the tax rate is so high. Finally, this plan will not add to our deficits of our national debt. With disciplined budget management and elimination of waste, fraud, and abuse, this plan will allow us to balance the budget, grow the economy at record levels, clear the backlog of workers sitting at home, and begin the process of reducing our debt. With moderate growth, this plan will be revenue neutral. These changes will ensure huge economic growth, and this country will be on the road to extraordinary prosperity. This tax policy has the economic well-being of the country and its citizens at the forefront. This plan is bold, but it is also cast in reality and common sense. Growing the economy will provide the security we need to make America great again. While my op ed summed it up, there are other important points to make. When the income tax was first introduced, only 1% of Americans were taxed. It was never intended to be a tax on most Americans. Under this plan, the income tax will be eliminated for nearly 75 million households and 42 million households that now have to file complex forms that they often need expert advice just to figure out that they don't owe anything will file on a one-page form that will save them time, anxiety, and frustration, and more than an average of $100 in preparation costs. More than 31 million households will also use the simplified form, and they get to keep almost $1,000 of the money they have worked for. The great reduction in rates will make a lot of current exemptions and deductions part of the reason the forms are so complicated, unnecessary, and redundant. But the deductions for charitable donations and on mortgage interest won't be touched. Those deductions have been very successful in accomplishing their objectives, assisting America's charities, and helping people own their own homes. It also eliminates the death tax because you've earned the money and already paid tax on it. You saved it for your family. The government already took its bite. It isn't entitled to more of it. Our current tax code actually discourages business growth and penalizes success. Too many companies, from our biggest brands to innovative startups, are moving their headquarters out of the country, either directly or through corporate inversion. In an inversion, a company moves its legal headquarters to a lower tax nation and pays taxes there. It isn't illegal or dishonest or even unpatriotic. It's just good business. Any business that does not take advantage of the opportunity to increase revenue by lowering its taxes isn't being properly managed. The Democrats want to make inversions illegal, but that isn't going to work. Whatever laws they pass, with literally billions of dollars at stake, corporations will find methods to get around them. It makes a lot more sense to create an environment that welcomes business. Under Ronald Reagan, we had the best corporate tax rate in the industrialized world. Now we've got the worst. Rather than working with our corporations to rebuild our economy and create millions of jobs, we are practically forcing them to relocate. The tax plan would cut the corporate tax rate to 15% for our small businesses and freelancers as well as the big corporations. Small businesses are the true engine of our economy. According to the Council of Economic Advisors, American small businesses create 60% of our new jobs. But when tax credits and deductions are included, most small businesses are actually taxed at a higher rate than large corporations. Under existing tax law, sole proprietors, freelancers, unincorporated small businesses, and pass-through entities are taxed at higher personal income tax rates. In reality, they are often taxed at twice the rate corporations actually pay. With the internet changing the structure of the business world and encouraging startups, there are more of these than ever before. This is where our economic future is being built, where every dollar counts, and our tax code makes it tough for them to survive. As long as these businesses are unfairly taxed at personal income rates, they will be at a huge disadvantage. The right plan would create a new 15% business tax rate within the personal income tax code that would substantially reduce taxes and help these businesses succeed and grow. As you read this, American owned corporations have as much as $2.5 trillion in cash sitting overseas. Just imagine what would happen if our corporations brought that money home. How many jobs would be created? Currently, they don't bring it home because the tax rate here is much higher than they are paying in other countries. A key component of this plan is a one-time repatriation of corporate cash now held overseas at a 10% tax rate. Under this plan, corporations would profit tremendously by bringing home that $2.5 trillion and putting it to work, while benefiting from the globally competitive, newly lowered corporate rate. The big question everybody will ask, how do you pay for this wonderful plan? The good news is that it is revenue neutral, and that's before the economic growth that will be triggered by putting more money in our pocket and by the new jobs that will be created. This plan will be paid for by reducing or eliminating most of the deductions and loopholes that allow the very rich to pay lower taxes, by the repatriation of corporate cash held overseas, by putting an end to allowing corporations to defer taxes on income earned outside this country, and by cutting down on eliminating those corporate loopholes, catering to special interests, in addition to those deductions that made redundant or unnecessary by lowering the tax rate on corporations and business income. A reasonable rate on the deductibility of business interest expenses will also be phased in. So generally, I can say I can agree with Trump on this idea that corporations that hold their cash reserves overseas they're American companies, but move their headquarters, their bases to foreign lands for a cheaper tax rate. Yeah, tax their income. Definitely, definitely. I can agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. We must finally reduce waste. Billions and billions of dollars are wasted annually, and nobody seems accountable. All politicians in every election cycle promise to reduce waste and spending. When was the last time you heard of government actually doing that? I'll answer that. Never. In business, you learn that small savings very quickly become large savings. When you're spending your own money, you learn how to eliminate waste. The next president has to stop throwing your money away. Save a few billion here, a few billion there, and before you know it, you've made a real dent in spending. This waste isn't difficult to find. In 2013, Business Insider's Walter Hickey went through the reports of each government agency's inspector general and pretty much easily identified $15 billion dollars in quick savings, ranging from the $42 million dollars given to a college by the Department of Education that was ineligible to receive any federal funds to the $2.7 billion dollars that the Department of Health and Human Services could save just by re-examining the price that Medicaid and Medicare should pay for wholesale prescription drugs. In 2015, the Citizens Against Government Waste issued its Prime Cuts report showing that $648 billion dollars could be cut from the 2016 budget without causing harm. $9.6 billion dollars could be saved by ending the Rural Utilities Service Program that makes loans and grants to utilities in underserved parts of the country. In one rural Arkansas town, the government spent $5,500 per resident of your tax dollars to provide broadband access. It also points out the cost of a lack of supervision of different programs, noting that there are 6.5 million active Social Security accounts issued to people that supposedly are 112 years old or older, although there were only 35 known people of that age. And a lot of people have estimated that there is more than $1 billion dollars in waste in the Medicare program. Okay, so you're saying it's a bad thing for the government to try to provide internet access to rural people in Arkansas? That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. Is there government waste? Yes, and a lot of that waste goes into the military industrial complex. But that's not pointed out, right? Let's point out the fact that they're going to bring internet access to rural Arkansasians, I don't know, Arkansans, rural Arkansans, internet access, that funding needs to be cut. But more bombs, more guns, more tanks to Israel, yeah, that can be approved. Anyway, the point is we throw away billions of dollars every single year, and the next president has to finally do something to stop it. It's time we finally brought our tax system up to date by reducing the burden on most Americans, simplifying the tax system for everyone, providing a sensible policy for large corporations and small businesses, and cutting out the billions of your dollars we waste every year. And then to top it all off, bring our jobs back home where they belong. Okay. All right. I believe this is the final chapter, Making America Great Again. So this has been a wild road, guys. We're going to blow through this chapter. Not much that I have to say about the tax code. There are some things I agree with him, like, making sure these corporations that hide cash overseas get taxed for it to bring that money back home to the American people. And, basically, that's it. It's pretty much it. Saying that you're going to cut taxes for hedge funds to create more jobs and billionaires, trying to make it easier for corporations to earn more and more and more revenue. Not calling what they're doing unpatriotic because they don't want to pay American taxes, even though they benefit from American infrastructure and people, right? And American markets. Yeah, that's not cool. That's not cool. Can't really agree with much on his tax code, but some things I can. Let's go here. Chapter 17, Make America Great Again. I was 28 years old in 1974 when I got involved with my first major construction project. The once great Commodore Hotel, located right next to the Grand Central Station, was a total mess. There had been a time when the Commodore was one of the greatest hotels in the world, but the hotel and the whole neighborhood had become run down. A lot of the buildings in the area were already in foreclosure, and many of the stores were boarded up. The exterior of the Commodore was filthy. and the inside was so dark and dingy that it felt like the building was on the verge of becoming a welfare hotel. It was a dying building in a dying neighborhood in a struggling city. I probably was still too young to know better, but you know what? I was the same person then that I am today, up for any challenge. I had total confidence in my ability to get things done, but today I have the added benefit of truly great experience. When I looked at the Commodore, I saw its potential. It would be the largest hotel renovation in New York City during the latter part of the 20th century. The neighborhood still had possibilities as well. Right in the heart of Grand Central area, there were thousands of people walking by the hotel every day. I didn't have enough money to finance a deal myself, and I might not have risked it even if I had the money to do so. All kinds of very smart real estate investors told me it wouldn't work, and yet I had a vision of what could be done, so I never gave up. My enthusiasm and meticulous planning brought others to the table. I'm an unstoppable force when I'm excited, and I was in full Trump mode on this project and many others since then. During the years it took me to put this deal together, I learned a lot about working with the city and the banks, the construction industry, and the unions. I could have just refurbished the existing structure, but that's not the way I think. There were detractors all along the way. For instance, the preservationists were angry about my creating a new and beautiful glass exterior facade. Inside, I gutted all the floors and replaced them with the best available materials. The hotel, the Grand Hyatt, has been successful since the day it opened in 1980. It became the foundation for the restoration of the entire Grand Central neighborhood, as well as my calling card, introducing the Trump quality brand to the people of New York. That project marked the first time I took a large scale failing property and made it great again. As part of that deal, I fixed up the great Grand Central terminal itself. It looks beautiful and clean again. I've done it over and over again in the 35 years since, and now for the really big and important one, our country. Mm. We can take a crippled country and make it great again. Our country has been allowed to languish and become a tarnished, second class place in the eyes of the world. The challenges ahead are many. The naysayers from the media and the political establishment are out there because they fear any changes to the status quo from which they benefit. But guess what? I have a vision and I understand the process by which we're going to accomplish our goals. We need to strengthen our military, help our vets, stand up to our enemies, deter illegal immigration, rebuild our infrastructure, revamp our tax code and educational system, and rip apart the ridiculous policies of the past, including Obamacare and the Iran nuclear agreement. Most important, we need to reinvigorate the American dream and give our country back to the millions of people who have labored so hard for so little. Too many Americans are wondering, and who can blame them, what happened to this nation's great promise and the idea that each generation makes things better for their children. Don't bet against what I'm saying. I understand odds very well because I've always tackled the hardest challenges and come out on top. My job has become one of the greatest. My name, sorry, I don't know why I'm saying my job. My name has become one of the greatest brands in the world. I know how to win. I like what Jay Leno said at the ceremony to unveil my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is now official, he proclaimed. There is no place in America that doesn't have the Trump name on it. Candidates for political office always say they're running on their record. Unfortunately, the records are made up of them talking about what they're going to do rather than getting things done. Our nation's capital has become the center of gridlock. It seems like these days most of the energy in Washington is being spent deciding whether we're going to keep the government operating or not. No surprise there. Washington's been running a going out of business sale for a long time. It's no wonder that our president and Congress have such low ratings in the polls. No wonder that we've lost our influence and the basic respect of our allies and enemies throughout the world. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has decided in their infinite wisdom to fill the breach by making social policy rather than defending our most precious historic assets, the US Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We have three branches of government, but the trunk of that tree is rotting away. For years, I had thought about but resisted running for the presidency. Friends, colleagues, and customers encouraged me to do something. I thought, I'm not a politician and I have a huge successful business to run. But then I realized I couldn't stand where what I but then I realized I couldn't stand what I was seeing. I couldn't believe the hypocrisy and inaction of Washington insiders who wanted to keep the gravy train flowing in their direction, while outside the Beltway, Americans were suffering and they were rightfully angry about the lack of leadership and creativity. So when I spoke up, the media squawked, the politicians cringed, and the special interests realized that their days of influence were out were numbered. A lot of people tried very hard to paint a bleak picture of what would happen. Then the American people spoke up. The crowd started coming to my rallies in droves. We had to move our rallies into football stadiums and basketball arenas, while my competitors could barely fill small rooms. The national debates grew huge audiences, more than 24 million viewers, because our citizens felt hopeful again and wanted to hear what I had to say. And what I have been saying is that it is time to do everything necessary to make America great again. It begins by creating millions of good jobs for hardworking Americans. The Economic Policy Institute estimates we've lost more than 5 million jobs since 1997 because of the terrible trade deals we've made. The jobs are coming back home. We've created too many jobs in other countries. Our military must be by far the greatest in the world. So when we negotiate deals with countries like Iran, we do it from strength. And when our soldiers come home, they must receive the care they have earned. This is the one national debt we should be thrilled to pay. A great wall in our southern border must be built. It needs beautiful doors in it to welcome legal immigration, but the flood of illegal immigrants must end. And we need to legally stop the practice of birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment was never intended to create a technical path to citizenship. Most Native Americans, for example, although they were born here, were not automatically granted citizenship. It took almost 150 years before a law was passed making them citizens if they wanted to be. And the Second Amendment was created to make sure Americans could protect themselves from tyranny. There is no way we will change it. A revised revenue neutral tax code, which conservative writer and commentator Wayne Root described as close to perfect, will put money back in the pockets of the people who need it most. And when you spend it instead of government, you will be creating American jobs. It will encourage corporations to spend their earnings here, resulting in even more new jobs. Our educational system needs to better prepare our children and retrain adults to succeed in the new digital marketplace. No one knows how to then better. No one knows how to do that better than local communities. The federal government should not be telling local schools how to educate our children. Common Core will be dead. Obamacare needs to be repealed and replaced with a sensible healthcare system that creates a competitive marketplace which will reduce costs while providing for the medical needs of all Americans. We can create tens of thousands of new jobs by rebuilding our collapsing infrastructure. These are the real shovel-ready projects. Roads, bridges, tunnels, and tracks have to be replaced or repaired before they crumble. And this will also put many thousands of people to work. The most powerful people in Washington are lobbyists and special interest groups whose money funds most elections and buys them influence. This has to stop, and electing someone who doesn't take their donations is a good first step. We must have a viable energy policy that uses our abundance of resources to power America back to economic prosperity. You can't believe what I say because to see what I've accomplished, all you need to do is take a nice walk through the greatest cities of the world and look up. Look up and you'll see the Trump building rising skyward. I've done things that nobody else has done. The 68-story Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, right next to Tiffany's, was the tallest entirely glass exterior building in Manhattan when it opened in 1983. That helped pioneer the modern luxury building industry. One of the things I'm most proud of about that building is that the person I put in charge of overseeing the construction was a 33-year-old woman. I made that decision in 1983 when the fight for gender equality in business was really beginning. None of the people who whine about the way I talk to women mention the fact that I voluntarily promoted gender equality in a male-dominated industry. The women who work and have worked for me will vouch for the fact that I was as demanding of them as I was of their male counterparts. That's the kind of gender equality we need. Leadership that inspires the best in people, male or female, not a wishy-washy former Secretary of State who doesn't understand the lunacy of having her own private email server. Laying off thousands of workers and leaving companies in a mess is also not an accomplishment, at least not one to be proud of or to pretend qualifies you to run our country. I always think big. I start with a plan to build the biggest, the most beautiful, and the highest quality projects. If you don't begin with big dreams, you can never fulfill them. Trump buildings are all over New York, from 40 Wall Street to the West Side Railway yards, from Columbus Circle to the Trump Palace on the East Side, and downtown to the Soho condominiums. That's just for starters. Eventually, we started building outside the city, and currently the Trump name is on buildings in 9 states, from New York to Hawaii, from Florida to Washington. and then tens of other countries, from Uruguay to India. Many large scale and even massive projects are in the pipeline and ready to roll. At 52 stories tall, 555 California Street is the second tallest building in San Francisco and the largest in terms of usable floor space. Originally the Bank of America's world headquarters, that building has been used in films including Dirty Harry and The Towering Inferno. It would certainly make anyone's day to be in it. Trump World Seoul consists of 6 condominium buildings throughout Seoul and its neighboring cities. The glass clad Trump Tower at Century City, featuring 220 condos, is one of the tallest buildings in Manila, Philippines. The 72-story Trump Ocean Club in Panama City is Panama's first 5-star development. We're building luxury hotels and residences all over the world. We're representing the best of America throughout the world with some of the best hotels and projects ready to be announced. I understand foreign policy from the practical standpoint. I know how to make deals, bring foreign governments to the table, and negotiate deals that don't give everything away. In fact, the Chinese have their biggest bank in Trump Tower. They want to be part of Trump wherever they can. That's why when I hear politicians talking about some trade bill they voted for or how they balance the budget, I really have to laugh. Maybe they have political experience, but they certainly don't have common sense or real world experience. Every construction project, every deal is totally unique. Each project is an unbelievable balancing act. I have to bring together the business community, the financial community, and the local officials. I've learned to work with great architects and designers. I've worked out deals with the unions and the trades. I care about every detail. I read the small print, unlike the negotiators of the Iran nuclear agreement, who don't seem to know what's in the side deals, which Iran struck with the agency that is supposed to be responsible for verifying Iran's compliance. When it comes time to expand, I got interested in golf resorts. When I was a kid, my father would take me golfing with him. He didn't play much, but he had a beautiful swing. I looked around, and who did I see on the golf course? Successful people, great business people. What were they doing as they played? They were talking about deals. I couldn't begin to guess how many great deals were made on a golf course. So I decided to build the best golf courses and results in the world and resorts in the world, and that's what we've done. People think it's hard to create a building. Try putting in a new golf course in New York City. In 2015, we opened Trump Golf Links at Ferry Point in the Bronx, and it instantly became one of the greatest public golf courses in the world. It's the first public golf course opened in New York in over half a century. It was under construction for many years, a real mess. Nobody ever could get it done. People were running in the other direction. Nobody wanted to take on the project's completion. The city had wanted a golf course built for decades, but nobody could figure out how to do it. After the politicians had screwed up this deal for many years, they brought in a businessman, me, to clean up their mess. I created a magnificent golf course. It's been a huge success for the city and for the Trump organization. I promised that golfers would come from all over the world to play a round of golf in the Bronx, and that's exactly what has happened. I don't want to bring golfers to America. I don't just want to bring golfers to America. We need to bring all kinds of businesses back to America, especially those that are American owned. If we create the proper tax climate and cut the endless red tape restricting American businesses, large and small, then we'll have a real job resurgence, which will help create employment. Full employment means we don't have 20% of the population either out of work or underemployed. Full employment means that every new worker can feel good about going home to his or her family with the pride of having done a hard day's work. Full employment benefits unions and employers. Together, they can rebuild our country's infrastructure. Full employment means that people who are now mortgaged beyond their means can get out from under the oppressive burden of worrying if their homes are secure. As credit loosens up from banks, the new and renovated housing industries will boom as well. We are at a critical turning point in our history, not only for you and me, but for our children as well. America may be struggling, it may be crippled, but we can rise again. Our time has not passed. It is here, and the potential is amazing. America's best days are still to come. Why? Because of our people. Together, we can make America great again. And that is the end of the book. Here's a picture of his horrible family. Here's Trump. Here's the slut. Here's Barron. Here's another daughter. I forgot which daughter that is. Here's Trump Jr. and here's Eric Trump. Is that Ivanka? That's not Ivanka. Did Ivanka have face surgery? Did Ivanka? No, here's Ivanka right here. Here's Ivanka right here. God, we want to see Ivanka. We we need to see Ivanka do a scene with Jason Love. That's what the streets need. The streets need Jason Love and Ivanka scene. Anyway, finishing up this book, I gotta say it was a challenging read for my mind. I hope my right wing, conservative, reactionary, fascist audience enjoyed it. I gotta say though, I agree with about 10% of Trump's policies in theory because he's never actually done them. He's never actually put them on paper. All the policies that I agreed with while reading this book, he didn't actually do when he had the chance when he was president, right? Um, and yeah, he did a lot worse when he was actual president. I'm looking forward to reading the book he's going to release next month if it does come out about his policies or his agenda for 2024 if he wins the election. So we'll be reading that. But I'll be starting the book on Kamala tomorrow. We're going to be reading Kamala's book. I don't exactly know the name, but I'm going to download it and find it after I finish this live stream. But I hope y'all enjoyed it. Y'all do the playback on everything. Y'all read it. Y'all jump into the comments. Y'all let me know what y'all think. This has been Trump's Crippled America, book 4 of the Book React series. Part 5 is coming up. We're going to try to hit at least 10 before the end of the year, so we're almost halfway there. And yeah, I want to give a shout out to everybody who's been reading this year, growing their minds this year, writing this year, everything like that. Keep your mind active, keep it strong, keep on pushing, baby. And yeah, this has been Simon Hill Keeps It Trill. Book React 4 complete. Peace.